I'm Austin Davis, Blockchain Beach, as I said. And let's go down the line. James, kick it off.
I'm James Ferguson, the CEO of Fuel Games. We build blockchain infrastructure for games as well as AAA quality games on the blockchain. Our flagship game is called Gods Unchained, which, since its launch, is one of the most successful and popular games that uses the blockchain, specifically non-fungible tokens. And we're excited to have a look at what gaming looks like, where there's true property rights inside it, and exactly how that can increase radically user engagement as well as virality.
I'm Mickey Maher. I'm head of revenue at Dapper Labs. Most of the audience would know Dapper Labs probably from CryptoKitties. So Dapper Labs is the creator and holder of CryptoKitties. So we are a blockchain game studio and technology provider. So since the phenomenon CryptoKitties, we've recently launched a NFT wallet for dApps called Dapper. And in the same week, we announced and launched the pre-sale for our new game, Cheese Wizards. So we're focused on NFTs, blockchain technology for games, and building more games that leverage both.
My name's Randy Saff. I'm the CEO of Lucid Sight. Lucid Sight's motto is play to own. So much like what everybody else is echoing, we're trying to create video games where the assets are owned by the players. Our best known game is MLB Crypto, which is now called MLB Champions. We renamed it this year. We'll be coming out with the full playable app this summer. We also have, yeah. Can you hold it closer? Sure. We also have a space game called CSC, Crypto Space Commander. We just announced an official partnership with CBS for the Star Trek IP for that game. And we have a third game called Cryptic Conjure, which we are publishing, which is a fantasy RPG. Oh, sorry. Is that better? Which is a fantasy action RPG. So.
Does this one work? Okay, good. I'm Fred Krueger. I am the CEO of EOS Links. We are a wallet for EOS and an app store for EOS apps on the iPhone and Android. As of this month, we are launching our new desktop app, and we're also the co-creators of the DGoods standard with Mythical Games for games and NFTs, and we're working with a couple other NFT type people. I think this is very early in the NFT world, and we're trying to figure out how does all best work from a consumer experience inside a wallet. That's our main purpose.
So DGoods, is that like decentralized goods? Is that where it comes from?
Yeah, I think basically it's Mythical Games who came up with the word, okay. But they didn't want to use the word NFT because the consumers don't understand that word.
Right, got it. Okay, yeah, I just was wondering. So that is a new standard that you created with Mythical Games for EOS.
And everybody in the EOS community is more or less rallied around that standard. So now we have Scatter, Token Pocket, Meet.one, Pixios, a number of other EOS players have all sort of joined forces and are helping push that standard forward. And the standard is meant to be very inclusive, right? So it's an open standard, it can grow, and it's online now, and the contracts have been released and the GitHub's available for anybody. And if you're interested, dgoods.org or just hit me up.
All right, cool. Mickey, you mentioned Cheese Wizards. You kind of breezed over that, but I think that deserves a revisit. So how do you play Cheese Wizards?
Well, the game's not quite launched yet. It's in pre-sale and it's announced, but it is, your wizards are NFTs. We don't use NFTs to the end consumer because I agree they don't understand that. And it's a battle royale. So it's PvP battle royale leveraging wizards, and they fight tournament style, and it's a winner-take-all type of tournament. And you keep and trade and can sell your wizards because they're ERC 721 standard tokens on the blockchain.
Got it. That sounds amazing. When can we play it?
Soon. Months.
Okay.
Few months. Yeah.
Got you.
Yeah.
I can't wait till these types of games come out and where you can play it with a remote instead of, well, the phone is obviously going to get the most usership, but the hardcore users want the thumb action, right? Like the old school, especially if it's a PvP, like Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter?
Yeah, I mean, well, we love to do Cheese Wizards on mobile.
Yeah, for sure. You have
It's really up to Apple and Google at this point on how they want to handle these types of games. We're in
Right.
active discussions with them about this, but for now it's a browser-based game, and until
Got it.
Someone cracks the Apple and Google nut, and then when that happens, most of these will be probably mobile first or tandem.
Right. Yeah.
Cross-platform.
We've had some trouble with the mobile apps, not even game related, but mobile apps with anything to do with crypto. Has anybody else here had that? Obviously.
Yeah, so we're in active discussions with Apple, and as are all of the EOS wallets, I would say. Apple is basically telling us a couple things, right? They're saying, on one hand, listen, anything that involves in-app purchase, do not go around us and try to do crypto and take away our 30%. We don't like that. And so basically, if that's your goal, you will not be able to do that. The second thing is they don't like things that look too close to the App Store. So if that's your goal, also probably not a long-term viable solution. And really, if you're planning on using an enterprise distribution thing around these things, very bad idea. You could be banned from the App Store for life. So don't do that. So I think there's a lot of don'ts. I think the thing that it looks like you can do is kind of the Web3 type, go to a website, authenticate, and favorite or bookmark the thing. And that's one of the things that we think is going to be a big, big push forward. So I think sort of what we have now with EOS Links and Token Pocket and these kind of Apple app stores, which had a lot of gambling apps and things like this, those are not going to exist in exactly that format. And what people are going to end up doing is they're going to go to the desktop, they're going to start favoriting these things, and these things are going to percolate to the mobile, Android, and iOS apps. And by the way, Android's not immune either. And a lot of people have had problems with Google as well.
Sure. So really quick, since you're talking about the things that mimic the App Store, how does the dApp Store in the Links wallet work? Is it linking to other apps, or are the apps published inside of Links?
So right now, all an app is in basically any of these dApp stores is a bookmark to a website that implements a certain API similar to, say, MetaMask, right, for how the app communicates, logs in, and requests tokens from the user, right? That can be done pretty much just by implementing a web authentication layer, right? So that's basically, and sort of, there's a whole thing in EOS now called WebAuthn, and basically every single thing from the app icon to the description, everything can be packaged with the app. So it doesn't actually need to be Links approved, really.
Right.
You see, it just basically needs to be, can I read this thing? Can I understand it? Can it talk to me? Can it open stuff? Can I bookmark it? And that's what you're going to see in a mobile app, I think.
Got you. Got it. That makes sense. Mickey?
I just think, too, overall, Apple and Google are playing it safe.
Sure.
They're looking at crypto and unsure what that means. So they'll probably make up any excuse or violation of their terms of service that they can to play it more safe and not allow games like ours onto the app stores.
Sure.
We called our game CryptoKitties, so there was no escaping what we were doing or what we were. So we got on the radar pretty quickly and have been fighting uphill since.
I will say one thing, though, about kind of, because a lot of people here are thinking about game development and kind of what can you do, kind of realistically. I think realistically you should think about web games, right? So, thinking a native game, a lot of people are like, well, I'm a native app developer, I'll just build a native game. There's a lot of problems. I mean, if you're thinking you're going to be able to communicate with a wallet via a native iOS app, forget it, okay? That is just not happening, okay? And I can tell you that I've had conversations like this with Block One, and they said, what do you mean? We can easily communicate. I said, absolutely not. You will never get through the App Store with that idea. And I can tell you right now that it's just absolutely not happening on Apple right now. So, your only shot is to communicate with a wallet like Links on the App Store.
Yeah, I'll throw out the Spectrum topic that blockchain gaming has kind of gets categorized a la CryptoKitties was the category definer. Everybody, that's the one breakout that you can really point toward. I think that the way our company is looking at it with our titles, MLB Champions and CSC and Cryptic Conjure, is that blockchain gaming is a lot like gaming or a lot like movies or TV, in that the category is so broad. Take video for example. You have YouTube, Twitch, all the way to the Avengers movies. So for us, when we say blockchain gaming, we are using blockchain, what we believe are the best, most useful features of blockchain for digital ownership in our games. The games are very heavily off-chain. We unapologetically make the games off-chain because they are actual proper games. They're playable on PCs. They will be playable on mobile. If a user wants to take that leap where they, take custody of it, we allow them. We support MetaMask. We support Trust Wallet. But we don't force them. That's not the primary thing. And I think this will be, we'll let the customer decide. At the end of the day, the consumer will decide. Do they want very, very quote-unquote authentically blockchain games, or do they want digital ownership as a feature in games? The analogy I use is the internet, right? So you have a game like Doom. Doom was a good game. It's a great game, stood on its own. You add internet, and now all of a sudden you create a death match. That unlocked a whole new category of multiplayer combat. We believe adding digital ownership to a lot of traditional game categories will actually augment the traditional games industry. And again, we'll let the consumer decide, but that's our take, as opposed to this, everything's blockchain. We're going to force all consumers to learn everything about their private key and blockchain.
Sure. Yeah, going back really quick to that note about the app stores being difficult, it reminds me of Facebook being difficult trying to run ads on Instagram or Facebook, anything to do with even an event. If you ran a promotion for this event, they would shut it down in the past. Right now, supposedly that's back open, but a lot of it was, as we know, positioning, right? Because they're coming out with their own solutions and their own crypto and their own stable coin, supposedly. So I would say it's probably a safe bet that Apple and Google, massive companies that they are, doing something similar, as well as playing it safe at the same time, right? They're just saying, oh, we're just playing it safe, but they're building their own solutions. Now, pay us our fees, here's our solutions, right? Here you go.
I have a question though, because I think one of the things that's kind of interesting, so I think if I look at Mythical Games, right, who I really think in terms of their product, their team, is really kind of at the forefront of kind of what they're doing. John Linden and Rudy and stuff, they really came from like Call of Duty and, great, real core gamers. And I think, their game, to your point, is it's primarily game first, right? It's not a game that requires the blockchain. It's a game which has downloadable components, right? And we're going to see phase one is getting those downloadable components in a wallet like Lynx. That's phase one. Phase two is going to be seeing those things trade in the App Store, right? And that's where I am really wondering where Apple is going to, how Apple is going to look at this, Like, the closer it gets to digital goods trading, even one layer removed on Apple, I think it's going to be really interesting. I'm curious what the rest of the panel thinks of that.
I think it's a mistake to focus the whole panel on Apple and Google. I mean,
For sure.
they're massive. I mean, we live in Apple's world. We all have iPhones. Their terms of service are very straightforward. You read them. If you violate them, I agree with Mickey. There's some interpretation. Depends on the reviewer you get. But at the end of the day, I think the question should be, why is blockchain making this game better to a normal consumer?
Right.
Not somebody who owns a ton of Tron, or somebody who owns a ton of EOS, or somebody who owns a ton of Ethereum, who are vested in the future of the token investment they've made, but a regular consumer. So I'll give you an example, like our game CSC, which we're now working with CBS on the Star Trek license. It's not just own the stuff. There's a whole crafting economy loop. So if anybody's familiar with RPGs, crafting is one of the most fundamental things you play in a game, where you go out and discover resources, you figure out how a ship is built, look up figure out a recipe, go and build the ship, fly it to a further planet so you can discover new resources, and you can go look at Skyrim to Zelda, the latest Zelda, and you can see this crafting loop. Well, we said, wouldn't that be interesting if you took a game like Eve Online, which again, if you're a gamer, you've heard of Eve Online, and it's an economic game with an economic loop, and we said, what if we made a lighter version of that deals with real money? and that was where CSC was born, even before the Star Trek deal. And the idea was that if somebody crafts an item, they grind, they spend hours and hours and hours and hours discovering, and that they should be able to sell that for real money, i.e. Ethereum or EOS.
Right, because they're giving their data to the network, right?
Well, it's
And their time and
yeah,
their
it's
energy
more
and
their
everything else.
time. I mean, to me, it's the fact that when you add, real money into a crafting economy game, you've all of a sudden changed the game. And I use the internet as an example. You've taken a game which is very fun, a game style, game genre that is very fun, people enjoy, and we're trying to make it a little bit more fun.
Sure.
We're not trying to destroy the games industry and change the whole thing, much like Mythical. I mean, it's like trying to reinvent the movie industry or something. I mean, people know what they like. It's the idea if you add real money into this, and that's what
Sure.
and honestly, CryptoKitties is a great example of that. Like CryptoKitties, apart from the fact that real money, i.e. Ethereum, was part of there, it was very similar to a lot of games from the 80s where you had breeding and it wouldn't have stood up, but because it added real money, it went viral.
Sure.
It was totally augmented the whole experience of the game.
Sure, yeah, and I know that obviously, Second Life with Linden Bucks and all these other old school games that have been around for a long time, World of Warcraft, they've had in-game currency for a long time, but it hasn't been as integrated. And like example, World of Warcraft, when it first started, you could build up a character and sell that to somebody, so that was a way to get currency involved, but it wasn't a direct implementation.
But to be clear, that was a gray market thing.
Sure.
So when you're dealing with gray markets, you have all the problems of gray markets, and inherently that puts a cap on what somebody is willing to pay for something
Sure.
because it's in a gray market. When you put economics as a first principle in gaming, you unlock the max cap. So you have the famous example of, I believe, 6 or 7, maybe 8 kitties at this point is sold for over $100,000.
Yeah, significant.
Our space station in our game sold for $54,000. F1, Animoca brand just had their F1 first car sell for $100,000. So what you're seeing there is an unlocking of what it could be worth, which
it.
changes the whole metagame. It changes the whole frame of the game.
What it could be worth, also fraud prevention, like you're saying, on the gray markets, that's harder, and you could get scammed a lot easier,
Well,
right?
There's a lot of risk in gray markets because
Sure.
the plug could get pulled on you. In our markets, the plug doesn't get pulled on you. It's decentralized. You own it. No one can take it away. Gray markets can be shut down. You spend $100,000 on a skin, that account gets shut down. Guess what? You're out $100,000.
Sure. Fred?
I think
I
that's
mean, I think one of the other points I'd say along this thing, sort of tangential to this, is that we think that the experience of people earning these digital assets in a game is probably going to be for some of these people their first gateway into crypto, right? So that direction really interests us too, because we get people with this Lynx wallet and they're like, what do I do with it? Like, how do I don't really want to go buy some crypto with a credit card, but maybe they'll earn something like an EOS voice token, okay? Or they'll earn something in one of these games. Then they'll take it and they go, maybe I can trade this thing that I just earned for some EOS token, and then maybe I can go spend this EOS token on something else, on some other thing that interests me, right? So I think the thing that really interests me is I see these NFTs and these games as sort of the gateway into crypto. And that's, I'm not just a gamer. I'm looking at this from the overall wallet and adoption of crypto perspective. And I think that's going to be a really, really big thing for us. And that's why I'm, even though as a non-real gamer, although my son's a massive Fortnite player, and he's over there, I think this is very interesting for all of us in blockchain.
Absolutely. On the note of gaming, just a quick side trivia. No one up here, because that wouldn't be fair, because I'm giving a gift for this. There's a reward for this. Who knows what the first blockchain game was where you could earn cryptocurrency? Malcolm? There's something correct about that statement, but that's not the one. It was something that was released very early on in this. How can I not give it away by saying this? It was an incentive network where you could earn cryptocurrency, the very first one that was released to the public in 2008 via a white paper. Okay, there you go. Who said that? You won. Yeah, I mean, isn't it a game? You're putting your time and into it and solving cryptographic hash puzzles to mine the block, and then you win Bitcoin. cryptocurrency. Isn't that the main benefit that we're talking about up here of playing games?
The least fun game ever.
Yeah, right. But it is a game. All right, you win whoever that was, it's a Bitcoin hardware. Was that you? Come on up here. But you have to accept it in your German accent. Brecky von Bitcoin. Very fitting to win a Bitcoin hardware wallet for you, sir.
I'm like the only maximalist in the room. I'm sorry, everyone. What am I saying? Oh, hi, everyone. I'm Brecky von Bitcoin. I make art in the crypto world and fun videos. That's what I'm doing. What's wrong with you? I think I should moderate this panel.
There you go. Thank you. Thank you. Brecky von Bitcoin, everybody. We're all going to San Francisco on the Crypto Bit Bus next in a couple weeks. So that's for the Bitcoin 2019. Brecky and a bunch of us, Stash, Wendy. So if you want to go on that, go see Brecky, I guess. There you are, Wendy. Hi. Okay. What's up? Either of them, yes. Okay, back to it. So we've been talking a lot about tokens and NFTs, but a lot of people here may or may not know what that means. So would someone like to explain what is NFT, non-fungible token? What is it? How is it different than a fungible token?
Well, James just launched the game, so maybe he can tell us.
So when you have a look at Bitcoin or any sort of currency in general, it doesn't matter if you have this dollar or that dollar, they're exactly the same, and that's what fungibility is. When you start having a look at non-fungible items, if you have this building or that building, it matters very much which one of those you own. And for in-game items, one of the big trends in blockchain gaming is the idea that there are currently items in games. Currently there's this leasing or rental model which allows you to rent entertainment to use these so-called items on a certain server, but at any time you can have your account seized away. If you try and sell your items, you need to do it through selling your account on a grey market. And I suppose what is happening with decentralization is just the valuing that these items should be as real as something that you can own in real life.
I'd like to point out that non-fungible tokens have many uses other than games. And in particular, I'd like to single out my friend Malcolm over there, who has got a thriving business tokenizing sneakers. And you might go, why would anybody want to tokenize a pair of Yeezys? And the answer is because if you're giving away Yeezys as prizes, it's a whole lot easier to give it a little ticket for a Yeezy than to actually ship a Yeezy. So they've actually have these Yeezys in warehouses. They have these little tickets of these Yeezys, and these things are highly actively traded to the tune of every second there's multiple Yeezys trading. So, I think that's just one aspect. The ticketing aspect is another area that we've looked at very carefully when doing this spec, and we think movie tickets, event tickets, and stuff are an absolute dead ringer for this format, because not only they can be used, right, like as an event ticket for this, but they can also be traded. I'm not going to be going. Let me sell you my ticket.
Perfect use of it. Anybody else? NFTs, what are they good for?
I'm a simpleton, so I just explain them in real world terms.
Please.
As a fungible token in real world is a dollar bill. I have a dollar bill, you have a dollar bill, they're equally exchangeable, no one gives a crap what the dollar bill looks like or anything about it except for the fact it's a dollar bill. A non-fungible token is something that's not directly exchangeable but still has value. So a CryptoKitty is a non-fungible token. Yeah, they're two kitties, but they have inherent properties. One might be blue, one might be red, and the value of that color makes them non-fungible and not directly exchangeable. Good real-world example of that might be diamonds, right? Diamonds have value, but they're not directly exchangeable because there's some properties, clarity, color, size, etc., that make them not directly exchangeable.
Got it. Okay. I guess another example that we might be experiencing more of in the future is your DNA, right? So you have a specific sequence of DNA. Unless you're a twin, no one else on the planet has your DNA sequence. Very specific to you, so that is a non-fungible item, I guess. And then the
CryptoKitties have DNA called cattributes.
Oh, well, there you go. That's a good tie-in. And then if you are a clone, then I guess that would be exchangeable, at least genetically, maybe not physically exactly the same, but genetically exchangeable for any other cloned sheep in the world, right? If it has the same code.
Yeah, I mean, just to be clear, fungible, non-fungible, it depends on the game. You can use, we will use non-fungible tokens and fungible tokens in our games, depending on the game situation. So, you have V-Bucks in Fortnite, those could be fungible tokens. I think if, we're all talking about fungible tokens and non-fungible tokens in a few years, it'll have been a wash. Because to the consumer, what this really matters is, can I sell this? Can I experience the ownership of this? How is that defined to the consumer? Can I later sell this if it goes up or down in value? Can I give it to somebody? And if I die, can I give it to somebody? Or
Right.
can I, inherit it to somebody? Those are the fundamental creations of Bitcoin. If you really think about what Bitcoin created is digital scarcity. Digital scarcity never existed before Bitcoin. Now if I die, I can leave my child my Bitcoin and it maintains value. Whereas my iTunes collection just shoots right back up to Apple.
Sure.
So,
I suppose if you have a look at what that does as well, how much would people be willing to pay for a house if they could never on-sell that later? Would people be spending $1 million on a house or an apartment in the city? Absolutely not, if they were going to lose
Sure.
that right. Currently, gaming is $140 billion a year, roughly, and $88 billion of that is spent on buying in-game items. But you're not really buying in-game items to keep, you're buying them just temporarily to use for a short period of time. But at the same time, digital experiences over the last 10 years, they're getting so much more epic. When I was back in school, gaming was a thing that a niche group of mostly males would do, and it was sort of a slightly nerdy thing. Primary school kids now, of both genders, are playing Fortnite on their mobile phones constantly. So the experience is there, the world building is there, but the property rights don't exist. And when the property rights come in, and everything you're spending time and money on is no longer a waste of time and money, then I think the thesis that most of us have up on stage is that that's going to explode, that number.
Sure.
yeah, the house analogy is perfect because it's like rentals versus buying. You'd be silly to say that the rental market of what currently is a $140 billion games industry is just going to be imploded. That gets into the sort of hyperbolic crypto talk. That's not going to happen. What's going to happen is there's going to be people who play the video game like they're playing today, and they will be seen as renters, and there's nothing wrong with that. And then there will be people who are maybe the super whales who are willing to pay more. The analogy I use that's also like a house is when you spend $1 million on a Jackson Pollock painting and hang it on your wall, you don't feel $1 million poor. But if you spend $100 in Candy Crush coins, you feel $100 poor. You hope you get exactly that $100 out of those Candy Crush coins. So I think that's a really good analogy of the house.
If we take a step into the future, because right now I think what we're talking about is going to happen over the next couple of years. But if you have a look at a world where these are real items and real assets, then there's no reason that you can't have the DeFi space, which is quite big in blockchain right now, use these as true assets. So there's no reason why, in the same way it's very difficult to have fractional ownership or derivatives on a Jackson Pollock now, are you going to slice up the painting and divvy it up between 100 people? No. But when you have that all being digitally native, then people, without even the publisher's permission, can start building sort of groups of ownership, fractional ownership. You could have Goldman Sachs having a sort of digital item trading desk, or create their own option standard, or collateralized debt obligations if people are lending this out. I think that is where the space starts to trend over the next decade, as the online world becomes a default and the offline
Sure.
world is just another part.
Sure. I think a way to bring that back together is the companies that are focusing on augmented reality potentially, just through the camera lens, because most people are going to use it here no matter what. You know that, right? That's just, most users that play games now are on mobile. That's just how it is. So the ability to interact with the real world around you in real time and potentially monetize that, or make it more fun or exciting, or add things to it, I think is really interesting. I discovered a company recently up in Canada called Veeam, and they're doing something like that. I think it's like social media mixed with an Airbnb type experience through augmented reality. So kind of tying all those different experiences together and interacting with the real world in a Pokemon Go-like way that hopefully is less dangerous than Pokemon Go was. But that went viral, and if that was tokenized, I'm sure it would have probably even gone more viral, or at least would still be around in some form. So any thoughts on AR-related experience or even VR when it ties into gaming?
Randy's the foremost expert on this.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's Mickey's right. We made a lot of VR games in the past, and we've definitely played with AR with our MLB game in particular because it's kind of cool to look at your MLB figure on a table. But again, much like we're talking about blockchain as a feature, digital ownership as a feature, where AR is a feature, you're not going to just add AR to an experience and all of a sudden it becomes super fun to a consumer. Pokemon Go is doing great without blockchain, right? And I think if you added blockchain, the question we ask ourselves is, could you make that game 5% more fun? Not can you knock it off its pedestal, but could we make it a little bit more fun? Our game, again, CSC is we play EVE. We love EVE Online. Like our CTO Fosri, it's one of his favorite games. It was highly inspired by EVE Online. And the question is, if we added digital ownership, could we make a fun game, a fun experience, more fun by adding real ownership? And we believe the answer was yes. And I think, in CryptoKitties...
We have a head designer from EVE Online. He thought the same thing as you, so...
I'd like to point out there's another thing that we haven't discussed here, which is kind of obvious in my world, which is the EOS world, which is there's a lot of gambling going on, right? So it's not only an opportunity to make money, but there's an opportunity to lose money too. And I think there's one of the things that a lot of people are talking about in EOS is sort of peer versus peer. Let me play a game versus you, winner takes all. And it could be chess, it could be checkers, it could be Fortnite, whatever it is, right? And that to me is a really interesting thing. And I feel like that could get really massive multiplayer and very interesting very quickly.
So to riff off that, our flagship game, Gods Unchained, is very similar to Magic the Gathering or Hearthstone. And something that people love doing in Magic the Gathering is one of my cards for pink slips against one of your cards, and I'll play you. And this is something which is super, super interesting, being able to have that element of stakes, which at the end of the day, what does that do? It makes that game 5% more fun or 10% more fun. If you have a look at, do we have any poker fans here? I know there's normally quite a lot of people from the blockchain scene who are big into poker, but to be honest, in my opinion, poker is a reasonably boring game unless you start adding stakes to it, in which case it becomes one of the most successful card games of all time.
I would say there's another game like this, another example from Tron that I'd like to bring up. So Tron, a lot of people say, it's fake, whatever. Actually, it's doing very well, thank you. It's actually on track to becoming the leading gaming platform in the world. But one of the things that Tron has, the most popular game is EOS dice, right? So you just roll the dice. If it gets higher than your number, you lose. If it gets lower than the number, you win. Well, Tron has in Tron Bet, which is now the number one game, I would say, on blockchain. Tron Bet has something where you can pick somebody else, and I can play against you, and one of us will win, one of us will lose. And that is, and it's like a stranger, but it's oddly very addictive, right? Because you're not playing against the house, you're playing against somebody. So I'll play Ben Sigmund, and I'll challenge you to a roll of the dice, and one of us will lose. And the fact that I win is increased by the fact that Ben loses. So there's pleasure in that, oddly.
Yeah, definitely very interesting. If there's no other comments really quick, I do want to open it up to the audience because we only have a little bit of time left. So
I could address the AR question really quickly.
Yeah, really quick. Yeah, let's do it.
So the way we look at this is, well, first thing I should say is there's no Ready Player One universe without the blockchain. Sure. So if you would look out into the future, that's what you see. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to crack the nut of games on the blockchain, which hasn't been cracked yet, right? There's plenty to do there. So when I hear like blockchain plus AI plus VR plus AR plus esports, people are just looping and lumping all these things together. It's just adding levels of difficulty onto something that's already very, very hard. We're struggling enough getting a mass adoption or your normal consumer or game player onto the blockchain. So we can focus on that first, and then once we've solved that problem, we could start layering on these new technology features such as VR, AR, or whatever else is the flavor of the day at that point.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, as long as the end user enjoys the experience, they don't even need to think about these buzzwords. They're just like, oh yeah, have you played that game? Have you used TikTok for doing pointless things? Hundreds of millions of people, you know?
Yeah, some of the simplest experiences are the most popular.
Sure,
so.
exactly, yeah. Okay, so I think we're going to open it up now. Anybody? First question here. Do you want to? Can we have another microphone? And we'll just. Here, I'll hand it off to you. Oh, thank you so much, Justin.
Hey, so great talk. My name's Kevin. I heard you guys talk a lot about how big this space is, 140 billion or so on. And I'm just curious, I haven't really heard anything you guys talk about the marketing aspect, how you're actually obtaining new users and bringing people and onboarding them more into this gaming world, the centralized old traditional way versus this decentralized way on the blockchain. So what's your marketing? What are you guys doing? Where do you think it needs to go, and when do you think that'll happen?
I think if you are trying to use the word blockchain in order to market your game, you're going after a niche demographic who only cares about, at the end of the day, the appreciation of their token, and they probably already have skin in a particular pie. So at the end of the day, what does marketing for games look like, and what does success for a game look like? It is engagement and customer acquisition cost. So on the engagement side, you need to make sure that your games are fun. And that's why I suppose everyone who's up here who's making games is making sure that their games are fun in the traditional sense, and blockchain is being used not as a term that's just thrown about in order to try and create another, frenzy in the Gartner hype cycle, but for an actual purpose. And that purpose might, incentivize some behavior, which leads to increased engagement. So you might reward people by letting them earn items if they play for long enough or if they do an action that you want. But at the end of the day, opening up those funnels and getting massive amounts of people in is something which their games currently try and do. And if your game is more fun, or it has, because of blockchain, some edge that gives it an advantage in terms of customer acquisition or customer engagement, then you can just turn on the traditional channels, the traditional advertising, and at that point it's essentially a funnel and a loop, and it just starts spiraling out of control.
Here's an idea: throw a massive esports tournament and do the PvP like he was just talking about, and make it a big move, or go to E3 this week and push your game.
So real
right?
quick, so you're saying to incentivize and to engage them, you're going back to the traditional email and reaching through Telegram and doing all those steps rather than...
Yeah. Well, my opinion on this is distribution in this space is the biggest challenge. Discovery, marketing. If you look at like other gaming platforms or ecosystems, console games, shelf space is built-in marketing. When Facebook gaming was big, they had built-in marketing from the social or viral channels. Mobile gaming has the app stores that are doing the marketing or discovery for you. Here, there's no really built-in discovery mechanism. There's no built-in viral channel. So someone's going to solve discovery and distribution eventually. It's just not there yet. So the way we approach it is just grassroots marketing, tapping into the existing community, trying to leverage IPs, well-known IPs with millions of fans to bring new users into the space. Really just grassroots marketing without a centralized place to go to get to find users.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't going to throw my 2 cents in, but it's at the end of the day, again, it's very much like adding the internet to a game. EVE Online you said online because it was an explicit part, having an internet connection. We really believe just digital ownership is going to work its way into a lot of mainstream games. So we're doing it the regular way. Brands with Affinity, Major League Baseball, Star Trek. It's the same way an iOS game would try and get above the fray.
Yeah.
And I think that at the end of the day, a lot of what's the marketing tools, the blockchain group, like our game MLB Crypto, has now been called MLB Champions. Those crypto fans are your hardest core community. They are your 1,000 true fans, but they're literally 1,000 true
That's right.
fans. But you don't forsake them. Those guys are the ones that ride and die. They will jump on Twitter Twitter and DLive and, you know, champion your cause, but even they want this to get mainstream. And the way it gets mainstream is brands with affinity and free-to-play rails. You know, some sort of way people can get in the game without having to go download MetaMask, go on Coinbase, buy some Ethereum. The free-to-play rails is a big part of our strategy, and I'm sure everybody on the stage is thinking about that.
So was that how, when you did the Dodgers game last year, was that a push to get people in the game? Like give them the cards and they have to go redeem them in the game?
Yeah, well that was an opportunity. Right. The Dodgers were extremely excited about doing that.
That was huge.
Yeah, so we grabbed that. You know, if you haven't heard of it, we did a 40,000 NFT giveaway at Dodger Stadium. They were authentic paper wallets. Quite honestly, I mean, we're all making decisions, wartime battle decisions. We may have made that a little too crypto authentic, to be perfectly honest. It was a little confusing for crypto people. Loved it. It was super popular among the crypto audience. Traditional Dodgers fans, it was a lot. You know, you have to now have a private key. So I think, you know, what you'll see is stuff like that we'll try and, but we'll be more gentle on the free to play on rails.
Okay, Kevin. Suggestion for a solution, or moving on to the next question? Okay, question. Brecky, did we get? Justin has it. Justin, really quick, and then I think we have one more question after that, and we're done. Yep. Go ahead.
Thanks, everyone. So my question goes back to when you guys were talking about, you know, the potentiality for games where, like Magic the Gathering style, where, you know, you're betting one card versus another, right? And I've been looking into building games with friends as well, but what we really stumble on right now is sort of the legality of those types of possibilities that, you know, that blockchain or things like Lightning Network enable, because they just no one's ever done them before. So I was wondering if you guys have any experience or can share what you found in terms of what is legal, or are you just operating in a gray area and you're going to wait for the hammer to come down or not, or that kind of thing.
Fantastic question. So there's a couple of approaches which are being taken in this space. There's the screw it, I don't care, people who are launching gambling dApps on whatever chain. And there's people who are going compliance first. And we're definitely going down the compliance first strategy. It means that you spend a lot of money on lawyers who are having a look at things like, are you a money transmitter? What is sort of anti-money laundering, counter-terrorism legislation? What's the difference between a game of skill and a game of chance? And I think that people who are having a look at the fact that we are essentially creating a new digital asset class, if you're not making sure that you're legally compliant, then you're setting yourself up for failure. At the end of the day, governments, if you become mainstream popular, they will come and they will shut you down, and you'll get in a lot of trouble if you don't do it this way.
Really quick before we're out of time here, Garrick, raise your hand really quick. Garrick from BMA over here. We partnered with them and Shuttle to give away some T-shirts today for the 50th anniversary of the Apollo lunar landing. So go check out Garrick in a minute, and there's some free T-shirts. So yep, go ahead. Sorry. Oh, I thought you had some more comment on that legality question.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say I can probably speak for all of the game developers on this panel. Legal fees are probably a top item in all of our P&Ls. So,
always.
Well, especially in this space, if you want to make sure you're compliant.
I'll just throw in the one last point about this is absolutely you need to, you know, we all have good lawyers. This is the side of right. I mean, if you think about it, digital ownership of in-game items, we're not going to look back at that like in 30 years and be like, that's ridiculous that somebody spent $500 and, you know, 500 hours of their time and that they get to resell that item it's clearly the side of right. So yes, you'll hire lawyers. Lawyers will give you answers. You should try and do what's legal, but it's also like, are you on the moral side of right here? And I really believe digital ownership of game items is just such a no-brainer, and it just was never possible before blockchain. Look, it's one of the few things I think you can actually say this was not possible before a blockchain.
Great. One last quick question, then we'll wrap. Anybody?
Hey, I'm Sean with Indie Scene. Quick question. Other than engagement and traction, as you guys have built up your games and platforms, what has been the biggest hurdle or hurdles that you've come across?
I would say the biggest hurdle from the pure blockchain perspective is if you're on ETH, it's too slow. If you're on EOS, the accounts aren't free. unfortunately, those are the two problems right now that the ETH and EOS blockchains. On Tron, there's other issues. It's just weird, but the experience is well. It's also like Ethereum. I think people typing in these long hashes is not a normal consumer experience. So I think the general blockchain infrastructure that you're looking at, as far as you've developed your game and you want to save the asset, and you're dealing with these weird-looking blockchains that are developed by people like Vitalik and Dan Larimer. These guys are not your consumer market, geniuses. They're geniuses, but they're the guys in the basement, kind of. And that's the problem is we haven't gotten to the. They're the back-end geniuses, and they don't, like I've had this problem with Block One for a long time now, a year, and I've been complaining to them that accounts need to be free. And they're like, why? I mean, people should pay. And I'm like, no. People cannot pay to come to an account if they don't know what the value they're going to get. And even $1 is too much. $1 is a major disincentive. So.
Sure, yeah. That's why it seems like a lot of the companies that are releasing these new apps on EOS are eating that cost just to speed up the user adoption.
Well, they can't. The problem is, as a lot of people in this room will know, you can't just say it's free. Because the problem is, if you say it's free, then I'd like 1 million of them, please. And I'm going to take all those EOS accounts, and I'm going to basically siphon off the RAM, and I will make $1 million. Sure. So that doesn't work. And there's a lot of very smart hackers out there who can get around these, free account situations. So how many of you gamers would use a game if you had to go through a KYC process, put your driver's license, and wait, say, 24 hours for it to be approved before going on the game? I'm guessing none, okay? So, this is where I think, I think the internet standard now is you come, you get online, I'm going to create an account, password, plum, and that's done. So we have to get to there for mass adoption, no matter how good the game is. I mean, you could have the best game in the world, but you can't get stuck on these blockchain things, unfortunately.
That's right. So yeah, I mean, it's all about the incentive networks, the benefits, fraud prevention, making it more fun, like you said, a little bit more fun than previous networks, and provenance, wax and opskins. You know where you're getting your thing because it's on chain, and you're not getting some useless piece of crap. Those $1 million cloaks, you got to collect them.